Something truly wild just happened in the Nancy Guthri investigation, and the authorities' silence is so loud it's practically screaming. The FBI, not content with their first visit, returned to her home late last night.
Under the cloak of darkness, mind you. Cameras were flashing, but behind drawn blinds, because nothing says we're doing something super normal, like covert evidence removal. The original source mentioned evidence was quietly removed.
Precisely, and almost immediately, the entire tone of this case changed. Official updates? Gone. The family's pleas ramped up to frantic. Sources are whispering that what they found was completely off script.
Tonight, we're diving into why federal investigators just don't revisit a crime scene unless a genuinely disturbing new reality has surfaced, why the evidence needed such a hush-hush handling, and what this critical shift means as the ransom deadline looms.
The initial shock for investigators wasn't the complexity of Nancy's timeline, but its terrifying, almost boring simplicity. Her last known hours were unnervingly routine.
No shouting matches, no melodrama, no signs of impending doom. Just a standard evening, dinner, family games, the kind of night you forget because it's so utterly unremarkable.
She was driven home just before 10 p.m. Law enforcement confirmed the timestamp, but are doing a suspiciously good job of not publicly naming the driver. That's a strategic omission that, to me, screams pay attention here.
She walks through her door, neighborhood's quiet, no distress calls, no neighbors heard a peep, and by morning, poof, gone.
The first major red flag was the house itself. No shattered windows, no splintered door frames, none of the chaotic mess you'd expect from a violent abduction. This lack of disruption isn't a relief, it's a gut punch of dread.
Chaos tells a simple story of force, but silence? Silence implies detailed planning, professional coercion, or even worse, familiarity. Someone known to Nancy, or someone skilled enough to ensure zero resistance.
This case rocketed from a local disappearance to an FBI matter faster than you can say federal jurisdiction. Their swift intervention means they saw something local police couldn't handle alone: organized behavior, interstate coordination, complex digital trails, you name it. They processed the home, logged the evidence, released the scene, and then, in a move that broke every protocol, they went back. That's not standard procedure. That's a correction. It suggests their initial theory went up in smoke. Exactly. They missed a piece of the story the house was trying to tell. Nancy didn't vanish over days. She vanished in a matter of hours. That tight frame screams precision. Either the perp knew exactly when to strike, or Nancy walked out under a pretext that didn't feel dangerous until it was too late.
Whatever they found or realized was missing during that second late-night search transformed this from a missing person case into a federal hunt. The house isn't just where she lived. It's now the key to where she's gone.
And that tight window is critical. It implies this wasn't random. Someone involved knew exactly when to act, or Nancy left under circumstances that to her felt safe. That's the quiet focus. Did she walk out willingly?
If she did, the investigation swings to her social circle. But if she didn't leave willingly, that chilling absence of a struggle inside the home points directly to professional control. Once the FBI steps in, the case fundamentally shifts.
They don't just pick up local missing person cases for fun. Their arrival signals sophistication, advanced planning, coordination, cross-state activity. Nancy's case went from a welfare check to a multi-agency operation because the scene didn't scream spontaneous crime. No forced entry, no commotion, just precise execution.
The real kicker, the digital trigger, was the alleged ransom messages, sent not just to family, but to media outlets. Boom, federal jurisdiction. Digital platforms, encrypted currency, interstate transmission. That's the FBI's playground. It tells us they're dealing with someone who knows how to manipulate information, timing, and exposure.
And there's an urgency here, evidence decay. In our digital world, the juiciest clues, router logs, temporary location pings, those fleeting messages can vanish faster than a free sample at Costco. The FBI moves fast to capture that digital footprint before it's wiped clean.
So when the FBI arrived, they took command. They processed, analyzed, and then in a major internal pivot, they went back. That return visit is the critical indicator. It means the timeline reconstruction revealed something far more complex than a standard disappearance.
This is where the public often misreads the room. The sudden drop in updates isn't a sign of a cold trail. It's what they call containment mode. When agents identify sensitive elements like a communication pattern or a coordinated abduction, they go dark.
Silence becomes a tactical necessity. Every detail released is a piece of leverage for the perpetrator to adjust their strategy. The FBI isn't stalling, they're protecting the incredibly narrow margin of error they have to work with. The objective shifted from just finding Nancy to dismantling whatever machinery was put in motion.
When federal investigators walk into a home like Nancy's, they're not looking for Hollywood drama. They're looking for deviation. Every home has a baseline, a rhythm. They learn that language so they can spot the stutter.
They check the obvious first: locks, windows, forced entry. But the real story is in the interruptions. Was a light on in a room that should have been dark? A chair shifted? These frozen moments speak volumes.
And the intent to return clues, shoes by the door, a phone charging, medication on the counter, these are artifacts of someone who planned to stay. When these are undisturbed, the absence of a struggle becomes the most chilling piece of evidence. It suggests the scene wasn't chaotic because the perpetrator didn't allow it to be.
Silence in a crime scene often points to familiarity, meaning the person wasn't seen as a threat or to overwhelming control where resistance wasn't even an option. And sometimes perfection itself is suspicious.
A room that's too clean, where everything looks curated, not lived, can be just as incriminating. It's overcorrection. A perp tries so hard to remove their presence that the scene feels artificial. But the most critical clues are often the ones that aren't there.
The power of absence. Missing keys, a vanished phone, a specific piece of clothing. A single missing item can completely rewrite the narrative. In Nancy Guthri's home, it wasn't the presence of violence that escalated the case. It was the eerie consistency combined with these small, unexplainable voids.
Crime scene processing is supposed to be a one-and-done, comprehensive event. That's why the FBI's return was so significant. You don't reopen a processed scene for kicks. You go back because new information shattered your initial theory.
A digital timestamp, a contradicting witness, a behavioral inconsistency. Something forced them to re-examine what they'd initially dismissed. Evidence doesn't always announce itself immediately. Its value often becomes clear only when cross-referenced with new data.
And crucially, that second search was conducted in silence. No press, no hazmat suits, no aggressive forensic teardowns. That absence of spectacle tells us they weren't responding to a catastrophic discovery. They were verifying something far more subtle. They were refining a theory they already suspected was true.
Refining, not scrambling. Scrambling is for when a case goes sideways. Refining happens when the pieces start to fit. Whatever prompted that return visit reinforced a singular truth. Nancy's home is no longer just where she disappeared from, it's the central witness.
Before they even think about public statements or ransom demands, investigators are deep in the digital weeds. In modern disappearances, the invisible network of connected devices often tells a clearer, more devastating story than any physical clue.
They don't just collect devices, they reconstruct a life through them. The phone. When was it last unlocked? Was a notification read? Did location services abruptly cut out? Even silence from a device is a massive clue.
The router, the unsung hero, logs every connection, every disconnect, every new device on the network. A sudden drop in activity or a foreign device pinging in the middle of the night can narrow a timeline from hours to minutes. And let's not forget the silent observers.
Smart ecosystems, door sensors, thermostats, internal cameras, voice assistants. They don't interpret, they record. A thermostat adjusting when the house should be empty. A door sensor tripping at an odd hour. These confirm if someone left willingly, was interrupted, or never exited the way they were supposed to.
The power of digital evidence is its binary truth. It either happened or it didn't. This objectivity accelerates cases faster than any witness testimony. In ransom situations, this data is weaponized. They look for pre-event indicators, messages drafted, devices prepped, routines altered.
This explains the sudden drop in public updates. When information goes dark, it's often because digital findings are being verified. Releasing partial data could compromise recovery, tip off a suspect, or destroy leverage. Whatever was uncovered in Nancy's digital architecture is now part of a darker mosaic.
And here's an unsettling truth. Updates don't slow down because nothing's happening. They slow down because too much is happening. The shift in public communication was stark. Early briefings dissolved into careful statements, then silence. To the public, it looks like neglect. In reality, it's strategy.
When information could compromise a recovery, they lock the narrative down. Every word released is a variable the perpetrator can monitor or exploit. Silence is about protecting leverage. In high-stakes cases, secrecy isn't a choice. It's a lifeline.
Publicly confirming or denying anything can validate a suspect's assumptions. There's also the pivot to complexity. When details stop aligning, when patterns suggest it's far more complex, agencies go quiet to verify and retest before exposing their theory.
This silence extends to the family too, often out of necessity, not cruelty. Shielding loved ones from unverified leads prevents panic and false hope. Law enforcement controls the emotional momentum of the case. Public frustration fills the void with speculation. But this restraint is often the loudest signal something significant has been uncovered.
In Nancy's case, the silence wasn't empty. It was deliberate. Saying less became the only way to save the outcome. Now, one of the most scrutinized moments during this quiet phase happened not at Nancy's home, but at a family member's residence.
Late into the night, law enforcement entered, stayed for hours with cameras flashing. Deputies came and went quietly, and consistent with the new protocol, no official explanation followed. To the outside world, this screams suspicion, but investigators view these visits differently. A return doesn't automatically signal wrongdoing, it signals a need for absolute clarity. These visits aren't spontaneous, they're triggered by new information, timeline discrepancies, digital data conflicts that require immediate verification. The urgency isn't about accusation, it's about accuracy.
And the nature of the visit is often revealed by who conducts it. Local deputies doing follow-up rather than federal crime scene units? That's corroboration. They're mapping layouts, confirming statements, collecting specific items to document a narrative, not dismantle a crime scene.
It's to eliminate uncertainty, to ensure that when they finally break the silence, the story is irrefutable. Now, for investigators, what happens after a ransom deadline passes is often more critical than the demand itself.
If communication continues, it gives invaluable insight into intent. It reveals whether the pressure was genuine or strategic, and whether the person controlling the situation is rigid or willing to adopt. This assesses the true balance of power.
Conversely, if communication ceases abruptly, that silence is analyzed with the same rigor. Does it signify panic, confidence, or a darker reality that the narrative behind the ransom demands was never the full story? The source also discussed the myth of the payout. There's also a public misconception that if ransom were paid, the investigation would wind down. The reality is the opposite. It would intensify exponentially. Payments don't end federal cases, they expand them by creating an entirely new evidentiary trail. Every digital transaction leaves a signature. Every physical movement creates exposure. Every attempt to benefit from the crime becomes a new vulnerability. The FBI's ultimate goal is never just resolution, it's accountability. Recovery is primary, but understanding how this infrastructure was built, who orchestrated it, and ensuring it can't be repeated is equally critical.
As this case moves forward, answers won't arrive in a sudden deluge. They'll surface quietly, through sealed court filings, delayed charges, long after the public spotlight has shifted. But what's clear is that whatever investigators identified inside Nancy Guthri's home in those first crucial hours set this case on an irreversible path.
The current silence, caution, and precision are not signs of stalling. They are the architecture of a conclusion still being built. This episode explored a truly fascinating, if unsettling, look into a complex investigation. Consider sharing this episode with someone who'd appreciate a deeper dive.